Joining us now to tell us more about what is going on in Lebanon with Hezbollah and how this all may affect Israel is I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Mike Wagenheim. Mike, good to have you with us. Let's start off with Hariri's resignation. What does that mean for the protesters? What exactly do they want?
What they want are reforms. You know, this is a country that's been drowned in corruption, drowned in economic mire for quite some time now. There doesn't really appear to be a way out, and the public is fed up at this point. The latest round of taxes that were announced on things like tobacco and WhatsApp messaging kind of was the end of all end for these protesters. So they want an end to the corruption. Beyond that, I think it seems they want a technocratic government. Keep in mind, this is a government that's divided by religious factions. You have, by rule, a Christian president, a Sunni prime minister, and a Shia parliament speaker. They want a technocratic government that will work for the people rather than working for their particular sects.
So Hariri's resignation is not going to be anywhere enough to quell their anger. And as you say, this whole thing triggered by the tipping point was taxes on WhatsApp calls. How has Hezbollah been impacted by all of this, keeping in mind that it both is a internationally designated terrorist group, but is also a legitimate political party within Lebanon?
Keep in mind two things. Number one, Hariri's resignation hasn't been accepted yet, but even if it is, he is likely to be reappointed as the caretaker prime minister and try to form another government. So his role is far from over. But as far as Hezbollah goes, they're at the climax right now of their political power. This is what they've wanted for a long time. The problem is, when you're on the inside, you can no longer blame people on the inside. So now the protesters are turning against Hezbollah. They had always billed themselves as the party of the oppressed, but when they're out in the street beating the protesters rather than railing against the government in this corruption, it's not the best of optics. And the protesters have said all means all, which means everybody in the government. Doesn't matter who you are, you got to go.
So this could then backfire on Hezbollah, even though in a way they wanted part of this chaos, but because they want to control even more of the government, but it could have the exact opposite effect.
There's something to be said for being an outsider. There's something to be said for being the maverick. There's something to be said for being able to talk and carry a stick without actually having to be accountable to anybody. Now they're within the government. They have many seats in the government. They hold important ministries. They are now accountable to the people, and when the people see their needs aren't being taken care of, they're going to start pointing fingers, and they're pointing the fingers at everybody right now. Hezbollah is no exception.
And of course, the big question is, what does all of this chaos mean for Israel?
Israel is looking at this right now from 2 points of view. Number one, cautious optimism, because it means that Hezbollah is going to be tied up trying to take care of internal political strife. We're going to have a reorganization of the government. Whether Hezbollah is involved as heavily in that government, that remains to be seen. They may have to give up some of their political clout in order to appease the protesters, or they might come out swinging, and again, they might lose that mantle that they try to carry of the protectors of the people. But secondly, Israel has to be worried right now. They were on the brink of war with Lebanon just a couple months ago. Lebanon is trigger happy right now. They could turn against Israel to try to reclaim some of that power for themselves.
So it could actually be detrimental to Israel if Hezbollah tries to shift the focus back onto Israel somehow. All right, Mike, thank you so much. Stay with us. We want to bring in Mudar Zahran into this conversation. Mudar is the Secretary General of the Jordanian Opposition Coalition. He's also an expert on the wider region. Mudar, good to have you with us. Hariri throwing his hands up in despair today, saying he has reached a dead end. What does Hariri's resignation signal to you?
Well, it's a defeat for Iran. We all know that Hariri's government, as well as the entire Lebanese establishment, unfortunately now, has been loyal to Iran for the last 15 years. Seeing Hariri go, even though he represents the Sunni sect, is a defeat for Iran. He's Iran's, I hate to say it, he's Iran's man and a loyalist to Iran. So is the governments elsewhere. And this is, Michelle, this is going to have a domino effect. We have also governments in Iraq and elsewhere who are loyal to Iran. I could authoritatively confirm Iran is very unhappy with what happened today.
Mike, do you agree with that analysis, that Iran is one of the losers out of all of this?
No doubt whatsoever. They're struggling right now. They've backed Hezbollah. They've backed their proxies in Iraq. There are major protests going on in the streets in both of those countries right now. Iran provides a military might. They provide the weaponry. They provide the foundational infrastructure. But what they haven't been delivering on is the actual economic reforms. They're delivering all the guns, but nothing to really serve the people. The people are protesting now. It's coming back on Iran one way or another.
Mudar, Hezbollah Hezbollah's leader, Nasrallah, has warned that this could send the country into total chaos. As we mentioned, Hezbollah has been beating up on some of these protesters. How do you see the situation playing out?
He could threaten all he likes, but he can't really manifest any of his threats like he used to, because first of all, his own constituents, the Shiite Lebanese, even in his own headquarters, Dahiya Janubiyya, the southern district they call it, they protested against the Lebanese government and against him. This is all about the economics more than anyone else, just like your wonderful guest had just said. The economics is, they have been supported by Iran for a long time, those government, those regimes.
So Muhtar, how do these protests end? What is the end game for the protesters? What are they hoping to achieve, and can they indeed achieve it?
They have nothing to lose. We're not sure where this is going to go, but we know it's going to just escalate, and it's going to spill into other areas in the region where Iran is heavily involved. This is only the beginning, not even the beginning of the end. This is just the beginning.
Mike, do you agree that this protest could spread into other countries under Iran's influence, a second almost Arab Spring, if you will, in a way?
To some extent. The problem here with Lebanon is that it's not as simple as just there's a second in command that can step up, or there's somebody else on the horizon that can step up and fill the void and turn the tide here. There's nobody in that position. There's no shining star. There's no knight in shining armor waiting to take the reins. It's likely going to go right back to Hariri. And unless he decides that he's going to institute major reforms and is able to talk everybody else into it, which is almost a 0% chance of happening, you're going to be right back in the same position, and these protesters aren't going anywhere, and they appear to be fearless. Whether that actually spills into other areas, not so sure yet, but Lebanon is a major, major problem area right now. These protests aren't dying out anytime soon.
All right, Mike, thank you so much. Mike Wagenheim, Muhtar Zahran, great to have your perspective and analysis.